session. Okay, it's gonna be led by Mr. Ayman Khalifa, and the topic will be importance of ESG and climate risk management. So we're going to start now.
شغال. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First of all, many thanks for the summit and esteemed colleagues from the banking sector and from other industries. It has been really a wonderful journey. This is the third day of fantastic learning and exchange opportunities. What I'm going to run today is hopefully a very brief sandwich of what's ESRM, Environment Social Risk Management, the climate risk, what we know, what we don't know, and the future that is coming in this, and sustainable finance. Now, obviously from a banking lens, you will relate to a lot of the flow, but, and trust me when I say that, it's not only for bankers, it's for everyone, each industry, be it insurance, be it development, be it any other industrial, etc. There is a piece that is very important to you that you might relate to in the presentation today. So this is a slide that I'm really proud to share, and this is the third time I did this since I came back to Egypt after nearly 19 years outside the country. I joined Standard Chartered in 2010 over there, and when I joined them, it was very interesting to see that they have policies around and awareness around living with HIV. HIV, by the way, is AIDS. And I was quite surprised. I mean, thankfully, we're coming from a country that Egypt here doesn't have this. But for an international organization, you operate in countries where there are various things. And that was really back when it was common in certain countries. And I was amazed to see that they want you to understand clearly what are the threats of a disease like this, what is the exposure that you might get from a handshake or otherwise. And it was eye-opener to understand how people can live together knowing that someone have a certain disease and knowing what are the boundaries that we should keep, but otherwise what are we allowed to do together to start living with each other. Another thing that really dazzled me was having at a minimum of 2 days every year as voluntary activities. And it went beyond the corporate and sustainability and affairs, etc. And I was thinking, what is all this focus about giving back to the community that we give? And they started this on the philanthropy era. Some banks are yet to develop their environment and social risk management today. But what I've noticed is SCB had this since 1998, long time back when they started their first environment and social risk management team over there. So what I have here on the slide, on the bottom side, you can see the global landscape. Of course, you will all relate to the Paris Agreement as you see it between 2012 and 16. And this agreement was really a milestone in the COPs that came after that, including the COP that we had here in Sharm el-Sheikh and the following ones. But from the start, from the UN development goals, from the UN social development goals, the task force for climate-related disclosure, all these were changing landscapes at global level. And on the top of the screen, you can see where this bank was doing on all these initiatives. So created environment and social risk management team back in 2000. Did start to join the Equator Principle and embed the Equator Principle in project finance again between 2002 and 2006. On the sustainability, they created something called Here for Good brand promise. They joined the TCFD closer to 2016, the Climate Bond Initiative. So going through all this, and there are 2 milestones very important. In 2021, the bank did a commitment, a public commitment to mobilize $300 billion of sustainable finance and transition finance. By close of 2023, it was nearly $90 billion already achieved of that. By September 2024, I think it was close to $120 billion. And in a couple of weeks, we will see the annual report where it's very likely to close 130 or 140, but don't quote me on that. We'll wait until we see the financials. What does that mean? That mean that the bank either did an advisory or syndication or direct lending or created programs for SMEs, for whatever, that help to achieve the sustainability agenda for the bank with specific taxonomies, with specific requirements, as I will show you later in the slides. So one snapshot of a very impressive journey on the top for the bank and globally down. Let me repeat again, all this doesn't mean that you have to be a banker to listen to this. It's very likely that in any other industry you can be part of this journey at some point of time. Now, this is an overview of how we do the environment and social risks. First of all, we created the last part of this slide, which is the framework, the environment and social risk management framework. In order to do that, and again, everyone was saying, don't reinvent the wheel, right? So we didn't really go and invent the wheel. We looked at the IFC standards. We looked at the Equator principles. We looked at the International Chamber of Metal and Mining, the International Atomic Energy Agency. And by the way, there is a lot of environmental and climate-related and social-related guidance in the metal and mining. You all have seen the, or you might have seen the Blood Diamond movie when they were really using and financing civil war in multiple areas of Africa and taking their resources, taking the diamond out. So this ICMM really look closely at preventing these things from happening. So that's a concept of responsible banking, responsible investment, and responsible operations. So if I'm in any industry, I can go and see these guidances and do the required conduct and practices inside my organization. So in addition to the external frameworks, we started to do something called the position statements, and I'll show you in a little bit more what are the position statements. So things like human rights, things like the environment, etc. There are cross-industry position statements that we have, and we have industry-specific position statements for certain very sensitive industries, oil and gas, coal, agriculture. I'll show you in a minute. So then this all has to start going into the governance cycle. What are the risk assessment tools that I have? So we developed something called ESRA, Environment and Social Risk Assessment, and that's basically a questionnaire. This questionnaire looks at certain legal aspects, environmental aspects, child labor, etc., etc., and I'll show you again in a little bit more detail. And this assessment we do once every year at minimum, plus if there is a specific transaction that attracts, like a project finance deal, etc., that attract the requirement to do this assessment, again, we do it on a transaction basis, and we also do it on ad hoc basis. And that means that if there is a special NGO, negative media that came on the client, if there is any negative information that came on the industry that we want to assess, if there is any change from what we've done last year or what we've done through the cycle, then we do an ad hoc assessment. لو سمحتوا ممكن تخفوا النور شويه ان انا تعب لي عينيا اللي جاي في وشي. شكرا. So these are the structure of the position statements. We have special position statements for each of these industries, extractive industries, like I said, the metal and mining, and especially oil and gas. The power generation, and this is where we have to stop all of us and think very carefully about what sort of power we are using, what sort of power our clients are using. Is it generated from coal, which is the worst ever for the environment, or generated from a cleaner energy resource such as ومين بيلعب في النور؟ خلاص. Or a cleaner energy resource such as wind, such as renewable energy, etc. Now, agricultural industries. There are two aspects over there. Are you damaging forests? Are you using non-ethical ways of harvesting, etc.? Are you using child labor in these industries? But also, is the water usage sustainable? Because, for example, those who know, there's something called the الري بالغمر, and they used to, and of course, our friends will relate to in Egypt what exactly that damage to the natural resource. So we have to conserve the usage of natural resources and primary water. So that's one thing we keep an eye very closely. How are our clients, how are the SMEs, the large corporates that deal in agricultural doing with respect to energy usage as well as their water usages? Are they taking care of the environment in things that we've seen, waste management in very small farms, etc.? They do burn their waste. Asher Rozu, and this is dramatically impacting. We used to see dark clouds in Egypt, in Cairo, and other areas, just because these small farmers didn't have that kind of awareness. Now, if I look at the agricultural bank, you have reached to massive number of farmers, and you can, with the right messaging and the right enforce, to do that. Exactly, absolutely. So you can impact Egypt's environmental change over the next 20 to 50 years just by embedding policies and standards against your clients and making sure that the farmers do not subsidies is going especially towards that. Absolutely, thank you, sir. So that's one example also on the agricultural industries, infrastructure and transport. Now, even building materials, there is sustainable building materials, there is sustainable and green building materials that you can use. But not only that, the structure of energy usage, the transportation, etc., we can build cities on sustainable basis, or we can simply continue to build cities that run with the buses and gas, etc. But you see now there are cities that are built with this concept, sustainable cities. Almost everything is running on electricity and clean energy, etc. Transportation is within special diameter, etc. The usage of electricity, I mean, we used to have offices, multi-story buildings with the light running day in, day out. But with a simple shift and starting to use sensors in these conference rooms, in these offices, if there's no one moving inside the office, then the light will just go down. Imagine with this simple addition to my own operations as infrastructure or real estate, we can save dramatic volume of energy. And one more thing, and this is a live discussion we had with the Ministry of Finance and with the Electricity Authority. The leakage of electricity in Egypt and in any other country is phenomenal. You won't imagine that if we're, for example, generating 100 giga, almost 30 or 25 of this is leaked into the system somewhere or another. And to prevent that, they had to start from the drawing board and make sure that they have digital picture of all the operations, all the network, that can show where the leakage is, that can show where there issues, if there is something going down, how to do response immediately to that. And that by itself will help save a lot of energy in the future that was leaking now. And that again will reduce the gasoline, the gas that we are burning to generate electricity. Chemical and manufacturing, again, these industries are very critical. One common issue that we see in this industry is the leakage of, or the waste management, where you see water not treated properly and going into, back to the river, back to the agricultural usage of water, etc. And that, again, has to be watched very carefully. But again, not only the waste management, it's also the gas, the emissions. And you must have been hearing a lot about greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon dioxide that get emitted from industries like this. If it's not treated properly, if there's not sufficient filters on the top of that, it causes a lot of issues. And some of you might have heard about CBAM. Now, we've got a list of industries in Egypt that will be impacted by the carbon border adjustment mechanism that Europe will be enforcing, UK and will be enforcing starting from next year. That means that these producers of steel, ceramic, etc., if they are not making sure their emissions are below certain level, they will start to pay taxes directly to Europe, and that will increase their cash outflow, make material impact on their credit risk at the end of the day. So that's also something that, at least operating here, either as an industry player, if you are an industry player in this, or as a financial institution, credit insurance, etc., you have to make sure that these clients are aware of the risks and are working again to try to avoid that. Of course, we have also restrictions or certain policies and standards around defense, and that come to the social, to the human nature of us as bankers and in other industries about what can we do and cannot do with respect to defense. You don't want to be part of any reputational issue with respect to selling material that can cause damage to human beings, etc. And of course, there are also restrictions on gambling, and we know that there is a lot of social issues with respect to gambling. So we do very carefully approach this kind of industry as well. Now, I've gone through the cycle which we do the assessment to the client in terms of what are the questions we ask and when do we do the environment and social risk assessment. Now, these are the type of questions that we have to ask our clients. And again, by saying clients, you can be a corporate that deal with third parties, sell to major clients, or a bank that finance, or a credit insurance company, or an insurance company. Any individual or any institution dealing with another one must make sure that the other part of the story is ethical, the other part of the story maintain a minimum standard. When we were talking about the third-party risk management, in our questionnaires that we do with any contractor, we ask questions like, what's the women ownership? Is there any child labor in your organization? And etc. So the environment questions are there. Do you have any transition or net zero targets? And net zero targets basically means that any institution have a target to be net zero, i.e. the emissions I am doing on one side are offset on the other side by green activities that, or reduction in the emissions that I've been doing. You can be doing that by buying carbon credits, and we've seen the FRA in Egypt now doing listing of carbon credits and carbon trading, and they're promoting for that, which is brilliant. Over time, this is now voluntary. Over time, this might start to be compliance, i.e. a regulatory requirement that there is certain carbon reduction in any institution, be it a bank, be it an industrial, etc. And I think we'll get there. Europe is there. Other countries are there. I'm not sure about US now after the new administration, but it's happening and it's impacting us a lot. Now, now this is part for the bankers specifically, so apologies if you're not a banker. How does it work in the bank? How does this environment and social risk assessment go through the credit approval cycle, whether for a large corporate or an SME, etc.? So if the questions there are set of pre-populated answers. Either you click the right answers from a drop-down, three typical answers. Either you have what it needs, or you're almost there, there's a plan to be there, or you don't have anything about this, and this is not something you do. So the answer will be either compliant, near compliant, or non-compliant. If it's compliant, we don't have to go to the credit risk and to the environmental social risk management team, which is specialists in this, and it goes straight and get approved by the credit approver, and the credit is there. If it's near compliant, the credit risk officer have some delegation. Either they take a call based on what they are seeing and the risk mitigates and the plan or the triggers they will monitor to ensure that near compliant turns into compliant over time, or they can refer it back to the environmental social risk management team, which is a team of specialists that will look at this, engage with the relationship management team if needed, discuss with the client, agree certain compliant triggers so that they get into the compliance space over a period of time, and they document that as well into the credit application. Non-compliant definitely have to be looked at by the environmental and social risk management team. It can still be approved as a credit application, but with a very tight monitoring strategy. Again, how to go back to a compliance status over a period of time, what are the triggers, and still we can even put this in the documentation itself. The client can commit to the documents. Now, climate risk, and this map show us what is it going to be like between 2030 to 2050 if we don't do anything about it. And by not doing anything about it, i.e. we don't maintain the climate agreement in the Paris Agreement, which require that the global warming does not increase above 2 degrees compared to the pre-industrial era in Europe, etc. So if the scenario go to 3 degrees or 4 degrees, this is what we're going to see. So what is this? The blue circles show where you have drought, gafaf. Rain is not happening. The rivers are drying, and that again will impact the food baskets, that will impact agricultural, that will impact wheat, etc. And the heat signals, which is the red, and especially the dark red one, means that there will be a significant heat stress in this location, in this geographical location. If you look at number one, India, the scenarios and the simulations being done so far says that India will not be a place you can live in the first place if the heat reach these levels over there. Imagine a 1 billion population migrating from India to the rest of Asia, Europe, Middle East, just because it's no longer a place that you can live over there. Imagine that for a second. If you pause for a second and just imagine 1 billion going from a location all over the world. It will be a catastrophe. Now look at, we've seen Los Angeles fires, right? 2 weeks ago. I mean, by the way, this heat map, I think I first picked up from Baker McKenzie research, dated 2020. Yeah? So, thank you, sir. So look over there. This is exactly what happened. Dryness and heat both caused the fire that took place, and the catastrophe that is causing billions in the US. It's over there, on the top left corner over there. It happened already. We started to see it already. So imagine the supply chain. I mean, we're not in isolation. Look at the Middle East. You have Saudi, UAE, Oman on heat stress areas. You look at the Mediterranean basin, all this area, there won't be enough rain, and there will be drought over there. Gafaf will be there. That will impact the food baskets of the world. You have Ukraine, you have Russia, all this wheat and corn, etc., that we import worldwide. But what about Latin America? Latin America is also a major food basket to the rest of the world. The Amazon area and all this area, if they stop growing crops, if the forests over there burn and destroy, the impact will be even worse and multiply globally. So the impact will be either on livability, you won't be able to live in a certain place, on the food systems, it will fall short of supplying the global food demand, physical assets, mortgages for those who work in banks, your mortgages will be impacted either by floods or by otherwise earthquakes, etc. Infrastructure and service. So if there is floods, if there are significant heat stress, infrastructure itself can be impacted. And of course, you see also the hurricanes, which we've already seen, and I'll show you in the next slide. Now, these are quantifying historical events that took place already worldwide in billion of dollar terms. So 2003, there was, and that's quite 22 years ago, right? Heat wave in Europe that cost 15 billion back then in losses. And the impact if the 2% degree is not maintained, if the Paris Agreement target is not maintained, will be 2 times more likely to have. Just going through hurricanes, and you've seen the US Hurricane Harvey in 2017, 125 billion in damage back in 2017. And the expectations is to see this even exponentially growing. It will be 8 to 20% more intense if nothing is done. Flooding in China, 3.5 billion at that point. 30 years record low Arctic seals in 2012. That is also likely to see 70 to 90% even more. So these 2 slides really show that it's happening. It will get worse if we don't do anything about it, and there is a cost attracted to it. There's a significant dollar amount attracted to climate risk if no one do anything about it. Now, how do we look in the bank about the climate risk? And again, that goes to banks, insurance, anything. You just look at how can climate risk impact you. There's the physical risks, and I just explained this to everyone. If you have collateral, the value of the collateral can go down. Your cash flows can be disrupted because of supply chain or the asset quality that you have. The portfolio of assets that any company have can be impacted by that. So increased cost to maintain things. So for example, if I have a warehouse in a place that likely to be flooded, or impacted by Seoul, heavy rains, then I can build a protective, sizable wall around the operations to make sure it's sealed properly and the damage doesn't really come and eat my operating assets, but that will come with increased costs. So this is the physical part of it. The transition risks, which is also very critical and very important. If you look at carbon tax, like I was just saying, CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, it's hitting Egypt next year. I mean, starting Jan 26, the industrial companies who are exporting to Europe and heavily reliant on export to Europe will be penalized if they don't have their carbon emissions controlled to certain levels. Changing customer behavior. We're seeing now electric cars, we're seeing demand shifting, and even investors. I mean, I'll come later in the slides to greenwashing, but let me pause and give an example about greenwashing. So greenwashing is basically that any institution, bank, whatever, go and publicly say, I am green, I'm doing 1 billion reduction of carbon emissions this year, I'm doing this, that, all the sustainable products that I am selling and the green products that I am doing. Why? Because investors now, worldwide, are more responsible. They are targeting sustainable operations, sustainable products, when they put their investments, because now they have the opportunity to choose. And where is this opportunity coming from? Disclosures. So the more I do disclosures about my green operations and about my sustainable financing, etc., then investors will come and pick my own stock or my paper or my client to finance, etc., as opposed to someone who doesn't have these disclosures. So greenwashing is very critical risk, and I personally have been trained about it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The concept is just being now heard about in some markets, but this bank have been looking at this very seriously from day one, because they know that the stock market can, being a listed bank as well, can be impacted. They know that the appetite from your investors can be impacted, etc. So customer change in behavior, either to buy your products or to finance or to invest, etc., all this can change and impact as a transition risk as well. The increase in energy prices. So let's say that we have Indonesia or any country that have coal as a natural resource, and it's the abundant resource that they can use to generate electricity. They will be using it, right? They will keep using it until it depletes. Why do I have to buy gas and buy diesel to run my and change my power station infrastructure while I have the cheap option? So if they want to, and the government enforce that all the industries over there must stop using coal, and they start, then definitely there will be an increase in the energy that all the country is consuming. Because of that, the price of energy will go up automatically, right? Just from a simple order by the government, stop using coal. And that can happen anytime now. In Standard Chartered, we have clear targets to reduce down to zero reliance of our clients on coal in their operations. And that was not an easy commitment to make. And this commitment was made, I think, over 5 years ago. And there's, again, stages to that. So now, policies in the Africa, Middle East so far have been slightly away from being enforcing with respect to carbon emissions, disclosures, etc. Maybe we've seen other markets where disclosures are now being mandatory, etc. But in the Africa, Middle East, so far only, I think, South Africa has a mandatory carbon pricing mechanism. Can it happen in Egypt? I think, and please don't quote me, but that's my personal opinion, that the starting of the FRA to put the carbon trading as a voluntary carbon trading into the Egyptian systems and getting this awareness going, over time you can create the supply, i.e. I create green projects and sell, do carbon papers, carbon trading papers, credits. I have the certificates, but I need to create the demand as well. So where will the demand go? Either the government will enforce that at least 20% of your CSR get directed to buying carbon credit, and then it starts to become a compliance, non-voluntary market, right? As of now, it's a voluntary market. Maybe very soon it moves from a voluntary to compliance market and other things. But I think Egypt is not very far from being a compliance market at some point of time. And again, like I said, in CBAM, we're already seeing that, and there are significant behind the stage discussions between the government and other bodies and Europe, EU and UK around how can we soften the impact on the Egyptian producers for the time being. So while the policy is not issued here, it's issued in EU, but it's impacting us, right? Moving on, now that is something, by the way, you can see, let me pause a little bit here. When I was talking about greenwashing, one of the principles in our institution about greenwashing is make everything that you do publicly available to the public, which means that everything I've been showing you today is available publicly on our library. There is a sustainable library for Standard Chartered on the website. If you go to standardchartered.com, and go to the sustainable library, you will find our annual report, you will find our environmental and social risk management framework, the green finance framework, all these papers, etc., even external advisors doing assessment to what we claim being green, etc., is there on the website and on this library. And that's part of managing the greenwashing risk. That's part of telling everyone we're not just telling you stories. It's in our DNA, and it's available for you also to use. And that was one of the key things I personally wanted to make a point that every time there is an opportunity like this, I will show what we are doing, because as a financial institution, as an industry player in the finance industry, insurance, etc., or even as a corporation, you can make use of this small piece of knowledge I'm trying to deliver today. So this is our cycle to assess the corporate clients. Now, we go to the client. First of all, we use what we have: financial statements, public information, asset locations, operations locations of the client, etc. And we start to build our understanding about the physical risks and the transition risks that our client have. Then we can talk to the client about these two risks. Now, if I find that the climate risk, either transition or physical, is quite high, but again, the client is well prepared, they have plans, they have assigned capital to meet these plans. They can always say, I will put a filter and I will do this, I will do that. But have you parked, do you have resources? Do you have some funds parked aside? Are you taking a loan to make these investments and do this change? Again, very critical in our assessment. So then I start to categorize the client. If they are having the plans, proper plans, and can prove that these plans are being financed already, it's green, or amber, because maybe the risk is very high and I need to watch it very closely. But if they don't have plans, or worse, if they are not aware about the risks, if I've already seen that you have physical risk, if I've already seen that you have transition risk, but you're not aware about it. I sit with the CFO, I sit with the treasurer, I sit with the CEO, and oh my God, they don't know anything, or at least scratches of what they are going to face. No, they are definitely red or black. That's a non-starter for us. And it can very well be a showstopper for this relationship in the first place, if I'm onboarding them newly, etc., and I see this complete ignorance. But as a financial institution, we all have a fiduciary duty to educate our clients, to sit with our clients, tell them these are the risks that you are facing. What are you going to do about it? Then maybe after having some discussions, I start to see that their senior management took that story back to the board, and the board approved that there will be funding towards meeting these risks and managing these risks, and even putting policies and standards in place to cover the risks they are subject to. So again, I can move them from black or red up to amber or green. So that's just a piece of the assessment cycle. Now, then the credit application goes to credit risk, etc. I get approved. There are certain triggers that we can be monitoring, etc. And when we do portfolio management also, we look at the overall industries. We start to look at who is red or amber in our oil and gas. What are we doing about it? And on a portfolio level, what is the exposure that we as a bank is financing that can be making damage to the environment or can have negative impact on the with respect to climate risk? And most importantly, also, we have a duty to our shareholders. So if I see that there is an impact on the credit quality of the client, I can start take actions either on industry level or at client level to reduce the risk that the bank is having internally and manage that. So, and like most of us in the audit and risk, etc., know there is always controlled testing about what are the controls that you have, and then you do the testing, etc., on the other side. Now, again, this is high level. How do we do client level assessment? So, again, I have to look at their disclosures. I have to look at their governance, their awareness, then assess their gross physical risk before any mitigation is done. Then the physical risk adaptation, like I said, they have plans. The plans are funded. There are part funding against that. Is there a transition risk mitigation plans? Are they aware about CBAM? Are they aware about tax, carbon tax that will come and hit them, etc.? Now, that is on the retail side. So just in a nutshell, when we look at the retail, the key things is it a mortgage portfolio that you have in Singapore or in UK or in Cairo or in Alexandria? Okay, what are the climate risks that might face the delta, for example? sea rise that will happen, right? So if I'm a local bank and I have a heavy portfolio of mortgage in the North Delta, Alexandria, etc., and this doom scenario of 2030, 2050 I showed you on the map did happen, and the sea rise level increased, and all these houses are below the water now. I have a mortgage portfolio over there. It might be reliant on these places as collateral. The collateral value went to zero because of a climate event over there. So I have to assess what are the vulnerabilities that our portfolios are having on the retail side. And of course, if a physical risk or a transition risk can cause impact on certain population or certain geographical area, in their cash flow, in their ability. For example, if there is major event that just push the fishermen from a certain area in Egypt, and all this industry is stopped, and I am giving a lot of personal loans to these workers, etc., then there is an impact there. So these kind of measurements we can do. Now, how do we do about that? We have to start educating our clients. We have to start making sure that we do financing in a responsible way. And by the way, there are two things, one called PRI, the responsible investment, principles of responsible investments, and the PRB, principles of responsible banking. And these two things, either you are an investor who buy a stock, or you buy a bond in the international markets, or you are a banker who lend to the corporates, you need to behave in a responsible way. You need to make sure that, because you have the power, the lenders always have the power. If I say that I will not lend to you unless you do 1, 2, 3, because you're damaging the environment, and not only I do it, all the banks in Egypt do it, all the banks in the region do it, where will they get money from? They will not have any access to funds unless they solve the problems that they have, unless they start responsible operations and make sure they take care about the environment as clients, as counterparties. So this is a journey of the bank, and we are part and leader in many. So left bottom corner, these are agreements, global agreements, where Standard Chartered is either sitting on the chair seat or one of the board members who created this, etc. This is the commitment that we made, the 300 billion mobilized. Like I said earlier, it's nearly $120 billion now already done, and there is a 2030 target. So it's still long way and very likely to be over achieved. The Net Zero Banking Alliance, the volunteering, the employee volunteering, like I said, I started with the presentation. So like I said, everyone in the organization at least need to do 3 working days of volunteering activities. And you multiply that by 68,000 globally, it's huge. The impact is huge. And you look at the communities that we operate in, Africa, Middle East, Asia, and to less extent in Europe and America. These are mostly emerging markets that do actually get the benefit. It's not about CSR as much as it's now DNA of the institution and getting the message across the employees and the staff. So what do we offer? So there are 2 things. Either you do a green financing, which means that I will take a green field, a new project from scratch, and finance it. A renewable energy plant, solar plant, wind farm, and that would be called green financing. Simple, easy to monitor, etc. And there is also sustainability-linked financing. And what does that mean? That means that I will go to you as a client, agree with you certain carbon reduction targets. You need to reduce your emissions by so and so. You need to improve your usage of the water resources. You need to improve your energy efficiency, etc. And if you meet these targets, the financing will continue to be marked as a sustainable linked financing. Maybe I will offer a reduced interest rate or profit rate on that. But otherwise, if you don't meet the targets as a client, if you don't meet the agreement that we have in place, then the benefit, the cost benefit I gave you on the interest part will disappear until you come back. So this is simply the core two types of products that we do, but also advisory. Advisory is very critical. We do advise banks, we do advise clients, we do advise governments. I think we did an advisory to the Ministry of Finance as well on their framework in Egypt a couple of years ago. So that by far is the product suite that we have on the sustainable finance piece. Now, like I said, we have the climate change Paris Agreement that took place in December 2015. Target was to reduce the global warming to 2 degrees over the pre-industrial era in Europe. The United Nations also issued the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. And by the way, if you are any institution, bank, insurance, anyone who want to do a framework, a sustainable framework inside your organization, you must look at the SDGs. You must look at these 14 principles, if I'm not mistaken, or 17. Sorry. Yeah, of course, audit, you have the, the numbers imprinted inside, because you will definitely pick up what is most relevant to your operations, to your industry, and implement it using the SDGs. Then the transition pathway, you have to look at what is the regulatory environment and then move on through that. Assess what are the funding needs at the end of the day. So there are global average investment increase to meet the climate agreement in Paris is estimated at, it has to increase up to 5.8 trillion per annum from the current 2.3. So currently 2.3 trillion is being spent into the green finance space, and I'll show you a number on the green bonds in a moment. That number need to go to 5.8 trillion. It's huge. And the risks are now massive with US backing out, and they will really make a lot of imbalance in these numbers going forward. Now, what are the things that we have to keep in our mind as a client, as an industry leader, as a player? There are certain triggers, or not triggers, parameters or pillars, disclosures. You must start to be aware about what are the disclosures that you need to make, and by far try to do qualitative and quantitative disclosures on your ESG targets. Have a taxonomy, and it doesn't need to be super complex. I mean, if we look at the sovereign sustainable framework for Egypt, it's already have a taxonomy somewhere into it. If you look at the kind of industries and the kind of operations the government call as green and sustainable, that define the taxonomy, at least for the normal non-expert into this. But you can always, go a little bit down into granular details and understand what exactly are the impactful activities that your organization do, so that you call it sustainable activity in your organization. Then before you put a product label as green, make sure that the second line look at it. Make sure that there is someone who put the stamp that doesn't have an interest in you selling or not selling sustainable finance products. Someone who's independent from the second line. And then the third line have to come. Make sure that the process of going and offering a green product and calling it sustainable finance went through the greenwashing controls and the principles that we must meet before we call it green. building capacity, of course. What I am doing now is something around that level, but there are always trainings. The Al-Mahad Masrafi Masri, and I have the honor to be also an instructor there, is hugely interested, and we'll be doing also CBAM specific training. We're just writing the material as we speak. So capacity building in each and every bank. And let me pause here again and say that the Ittihad al-Banuk, the Sustainable Finance Committee that we have, and it's led by Dr. Dalia from CIB. She's doing an amazing job. And the level of activities and the number of meetings that we're having and the impact that I am seeing on the ground from this committee is unparalleled, including working with universities, including working with other institutions and banks, etc., sharing information and trying to make real impact using the banks as a platform over there. And then benchmark, like I showed you in the first slide, IFC, Equator Principles, etc. You look at the relevant benchmark to your industry. If you're doing project finance, look at the Equator Principle. If you're doing general, corporate activities and you just need to have a framework in the background, go and look at the UN SDGs and so on. There are many publicly available frameworks that any institution can make use of. End of 2023, climate bonds recorded 5.5 trillion. There is and it's easy if you just do climate bonds, Google it, and you will see the latest numbers immediately. Imagine the size of the green financing. There is huge interest into going green outside. And Egypt is going there. Egypt and the central bank has been leading the way for all of us to go and make sure we have our sustainable finance departments, make sure that we have targets to lend a certain part of the portfolio, even if it's not mandatory today. That means it's coming. I'm sure it's coming our way. There will be more granular requirements. So in a nutshell, we spoke about greenwashing, and sometimes we call it transition washing, because the risks from transition from a high carbon economy to a low carbon economy are two things. One, I already explained, which is the greenwashing or transition washing. I just want to make everything I'm doing as green, although it's not there or slightly less than what I'm saying. But also unjust transition. You cannot take the damage from one area and put it in another area and say, hey, I've done green financing, I did that. But come on, hold on. When you did this project, even it's a wind farm in Bani Suef, for example. But when you did that, you displaced so many people. You you did that on the agricultural space. You're taking agricultural land and use it for an industrial purpose, or biodiversity. And there's little awareness about biodiversity in many markets I've seen. And biodiversity, in a nutshell, is there are always certain habitants in any environment. To give you a small example, in Australia, back when Australia was just being habitated by the British, etc., one farmer decided to bring wild rabbits into the farm, and he thought that it's a brilliant idea. But there was no natural predators to this over there. And over time, you know how rabbits multiply, right? So over time, it became massive number of rabbits everywhere, and they are eating all the crops. You grow carrots, they eat it. You grow lettuce, they eat it, etc. And it became a disaster, and they were doing all kinds of pest control to try and get rid of this problem. So that's just by introducing an alien to an environment. That's the concept of biodiversity. You have always to watch out what is the components of these, of the existing landscape that you have. What are the habitants that live there? Is there going to be an impact when I introduce my operations or my new project or whatever it's called over there, yes or no? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's about unjust transition. But also, if you do social impact to a certain place. And there are small examples. If you do a school within an area, then you do unjust to, for example, inhabitants of this area. That's just a small example. But think always, what is the impact of introducing this, even if it is a transition financing, if it's a green project, what are the downsides? We must make sure that it's just, it's fair. And that's the risk. And that's what the second line of defense need to also make sure from a governance perspective and ultimately the audit over there. This slide is basically showing what all sort of green financing and sustainable financing the bank offers with the different verticals: financial market, ESG advisories and derivatives, treasury, in transaction banking, even in personal banking, etc. It can be on the liabilities side as well as the assets side. And this is just a summary of what I've said. You must have a framework. You need to ensure you build your capacity in whatever industry you are playing. If we all raise the benchmark, then definitely we will have meaningful impact. If all the investors and the banks raise the benchmark and raise the requirements and make sure that there is compliance requirements met by their clients before we do finance to them, or even if I accept their deposits, it's not only on lending side. I mean, I can stop you from using even my liabilities side on the balance sheet, not take your deposits if you are not green. If we reach that, definitely there will be impact, positive impact on the economy that we are sustaining. And one last word, in climate risk and ESG in general, no one wins unless everybody wins. Thank you so much. That's a small disclaimer, so if you took my photos or anything, don't quote me on anything. I'm not legally liable because we are an international bank, so no legal liability whatsoever on anything. I'm happy to take it.